either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris.
And oh, shiiiiitake mushrooms. Hold on to your Machete BuddyPacks. We're back with some more action in a family cult classic, Spy Kids.
The first one, to be specific, because it's now a full-on franchise since we originally watched this show.
Yeah. Another episode we planned so well about siblings and family after doing Jigra and RRR.
Yeah, well, didn't think about that. Just thought to ourselves, what's a movie from our childhood that really impacted us? And boy, Spy Kids, lasting impact.
Oh, yeah. So Spy Kids is written and directed by Robert Rodriguez. It stars Alexa Vega as Cameron Cortez, Daryl Sabara as Junie Cortez, Antonio Banderas as Gregorio Cortez.
Of course.
And Carla Gugino as Ingrid Cortez.
And also Danny Trejo's in this movie.
Yeah.
And he's in all of them, actually.
A slew of other celebrities, including Tony Shalhoub, and I'm totally butchered that name.
Yeah.
A.k.a. Monk. That's, I think, what more people know.
In fact, my husband looked up from playing his game and went, "Is that Monk?"
Yeah.
And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in this too.
Also Cheech Marin of Cheech and Chong.
Of course.
George Clooney.
Yeah, for some reason. Yeah, no, this is a surprisingly star-studded cast, and I do think a lot of that has to do with who was directing it.
Well, yeah, I mean, Cheech and Danny Trejo. George Clooney, because all of them were also in From Dusk Till Dawn as well, so...
Yeah, there's a lot of people who had already worked with Rodriguez and was like, you know what, you're working on a family-friendly show? You know what, sign me up. Yeah.
And Spy Kids, for those unfamiliar, is about a pair of kids whose parents are really spies and get kidnapped, so they have to go and save them as spies.
And in case you haven't seen the other Spy Kids in this movie franchise, and we're wondering, like, what the plot of those are, it's that as well.
Yeah, no.
That was the main idea behind the franchise, was that children figure out their families are spies.
Okay, after the first, because here's the thing.
Yeah.
I have watched the first 4.
I'm very proud of you.
Yes, so I unfortunately did not get to Armageddon, which is the one that came out last year.
Yeah.
But I did see the one with Jessica Alba in it.
Okay, so you're fairly caught up.
So the other 3 aren't like that at all. It's just they already know they're all spies. Second one's completely established spies.
Well, yes.
Third one, completely kids mission with grandpa.
Yes, the grandparent one is It's very fun.
And the guy.
That's true.
But for Spy Kids, I have very limited resources, which I was honestly surprised with how big this franchise is. And for us as kids at some point, you would think that there would have been some, a lot of special features. But I do
would assume.
Yeah, I do have a couple. I have Hispanic Blood, an interview with Robert Rodriguez by Jose Martinez and Christine Devine, published in Creative Screenwriting in December 21st, 2015. Also, not just solid for an overall Spy Kids, but for just Rodriguez's earlier stuff in general.
Yes, very much.
And then secondarily, I have a 2020 article from Collider. Robert Rodriguez reflects on pushing the Latin representation in Spy Kids.
And truthfully, there's not a lot of interviews that I could find with most of the actors or actresses who are in this. The few bits that they do talk about, they talk about how much they enjoyed it, how much they felt like it impacted themselves or their family and friends, but not a ton of behind the scenes.
No, just all of what I could find was really just what was the genesis of this whole franchise in general.
Yeah.
And honestly, for me, and he'll probably be happy with this, but this was definitely my introduction to Rodriguez when I was a little lad.
Good, because compared to some of his other options, this was the safer option.
Yes, and I'll get into why he'd be proud of that, because I didn't get into his other stuff until I was in college.
Yeah.
I was getting into more movies I hadn't watched through his association with Tarantino, From Dusk Till Dawn and Planet Terror.
Definitely.
As well as Machete and Sin City. And I think Machete was the really first one that turned me on to the rest of his work.
Sure.
Just because it was all over the top and whatnot.
It is very over the top.
But he had been wanting to make a family movie since his breakout with El Mariachi.
Oh, yeah.
Stating I think his movie before that, or short film before that, Bedhead, was more family friendly.
Yeah, and he talks about how he felt that there was kind of this gap in the movie franchise world for just a fun kids movie that felt like a kid had written and directed it as well. And he had this idea for it. I love this idea. I think it's part of the reason Spy Kids lasted and is still so good and funny. But yeah, he really did nail the target demographic, especially for 2000s.
Yeah, and I mean, his initial idea was pretty much what became the movie. And in his words, it's just parents are spies and their kids don't know. Parents get captured and the kids have to save them. I thought it'd be cool to have a bad guy like Willy Wonka, imaginative and childlike.
Yeah, and of course, especially for the first one, a lot of James Bond influence and the undeniable Willy Wonka isms of it. But it's also just incredibly unique in its styling. I was really kind of bummed that there wasn't more interviews and like behind the scenes available, because whoever came up with the visuals for this movie knocked it out of the park. Nothing looks like this.
No, exactly. Well, I think a little bit of what's that show, like Lazy Town?
A little bit in the like kids show-esqueness of it, where everything feels like a stage. There's a lot of very like impossible architecture and stuff like that happening. But just like the pure like there is like an almost living art styling to it that you can say pulls from a bunch of different places, but is so ingrained in our minds as like that's just what kids, like Spy Kids, looks like, that I honestly was really hoping to have more than just like, yeah, I was inspired by Willy Wonka. Like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I see it a little bit.
But that's kind of the nice side too, is that it's not, it doesn't it has depth to it, and honestly all his kids movies that I've seen so far have some type of depth to them. It's just
true.
They're a little bit stupid at times. I think people can overlook like where the core of this movie is, because well, and that's part of the thing too, is like these are specifically movies for kids.
They are, because
he mentioned that someone told him at some event that his 6-year-old loved Desperado, and I love Desperado. I finally watched it for the first time last year, and it is.
Yeah, no, I also love Desperado. I don't know if it's for a 6-year-old, though.
Maybe a 10-year-old, but a 6-year-old, yeah, is a little...
Little much.
Yeah.
Little much. But that was kind of also the running joke between Rodriguez and a couple others, especially Trejo, as far as, like, why these big adult actors were in a kids' movie, is they're like, well, you know, we gotta do something for the kids, but also, like, how fun to do a spy movie.
Well, and it was also interesting, too, because it was a movie that was more about his family than...
Yes.
And that's part of the reason, like, I want more about that, of, like, who are these people inspired by? Like, how did this all come together? But, like, it's just, like, it's these couple little things he says. They just,
he
like...
leaves you a breadcrumb trail where he says, like, oh, yeah, the family's loosely inspired by my own family because, you know, I'm Latino, like, they're a Latino family. And, like, it's been praised as a wonderful representation. Which
is something I didn't really think about, and something, like...
I definitely didn't notice as a kid. As an adult, I'm like, yeah, no, this is a very obviously Latino family.
Yeah.
Well, as a child, I was just too enraptured with the gadgets.
Yeah, and maybe it was just my background, because, like, I grew up around, like, just a diverse community of people to begin with, and different cultures, but, like, well, I just saw it as, a cool Spy Kids movie, but he actually really had to push for it to be a Latin family over just an American family. Which I do think is interesting to see, especially as going from this and then looking forward 20 plus years, that a full Latin family was a questionable thing, and for it to be more commonplace nowadays.
Oh, sure.
But, and I mean, looking at it, I mean, a couple years later, or a year later, we had the George Lopez show come out.
Very true.
Ugly Betty in 2006. But I do also like that Robert Rodriguez admitted that it hadn't been done before. And he did understand where they were coming from. Like, whenever you're trying something new, it's like, well, is our audience going to be smaller? Like, it is a financial risk. He understood the business side of it. And he understood that he can't just say, because it's my family. It wasn't a convincing argument.
True. I do think, though, that partly because he had these worries that the audience would shrink due to this not being, like, the standard white kid ABC family, like... The jokes and references about them being a Latino family feel more just part of the movie as opposed to the running joke like the Lopez show, where it was like the focus was, oh, they are a Latino family, like that's what is important. In this one, it's the spy part without any doubt, and they just happen to have all of the background elements, and I think that's why a lot of people really praised it, was it wasn't hammered home, but it also was not muted down in any way.
Yeah, and I like his response and why his reasoning for it to be a Latino family is okay, you don't have to be British to enjoy James Bond, but Rain's so specific, it becomes more universal, and that you do see that where it's like you don't really question it anymore. It's just like, okay,
yeah, no, it works perfectly. Mm-hmm. It works perfectly,
exactly. And I think it initially, just from knowing that, it just goes to show that if you make something interesting, people are going to go see it.
100%.
Exactly. So.
Because boy, did people go see this.
Mm-hmm.
This movie made a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
Like, a lot. When this movie aired and when it was done running for just the movie, not including home sales, it grossed $147.9 million worldwide for a children's film.
Yeah.
Which is pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, for a children's film like this, too.
Yes. And granted, this movie also had the most insane, like, ads and toy incorporations that went with it. McDonald's was on it immediately. I think their toys might have launched even before the movie was even fully out.
That seems to be the case with a lot of stuff like that, where it's like it's part of that hype with like Pokemon like releasing the toys and stuff before we get the games.
This is exactly the same hype that the Pokemon train had that we talked about with that episode. But this one didn't have the already strong backing of a fandom base like Pokemon did. Granted, this was young Pokemon, but this had nobody. There was no pre-Spy Kids for you to like be ready to hype about. So the marketing team went hard. There was constant ads. There was radio ads. Every cereal, Spy Kids. McDonald's definitely had a Spy Kids. I feel like there might have been another restaurant. Can't remember which one.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think. I don't know how we even stumbled upon this as a kid, because I was in Germany and completely different market over there.
And I know I didn't see this one in theaters. I would have been enamored with seeing this one in theaters. This would have been like my friends and I's like big group, because when this came out in 2001, we would have been right on the James Bond cusp of like having just started to watch some of the older Bonds. And we were enraptured. We loved Bond. We loved spy things. We wanted to be agents. And this was also a time where 2001, just general toys, there was a lot of spy gadgets in general. It was a popular idea at the time.
Yeah, I do remember some of those, like, spy manuals and stuff, the ghost hunting manual.
Yeah, and, like, it's a theme that comes around every couple of years, just like with all kids' stuff. Like, there's a rotation of a different variety. Sometimes it's firefighters, sometimes it's superheroes, sometimes it's spies. It just so happened that Spy Kids came out during a spy-heavy phase.
Okay.
Got kind of lucky, but also worked really well.
I wonder where James Bond franchise was at that point. Give me a second.
I don't remember which one we were on.
We were at the tail end of the Pierce Brosnan era.
That's right, we were.
So, yeah,
we were a year before one new James Bond, too.
And we had GoldenEye as a kid.
We did, and let's be real, a lot of us loved GoldenEye, and also the video game version of GoldenEye. So, like... Oh,
that's why I was talking about the video game version.
I still have my VHS tape of GoldenEye, and I watch it regularly.
I didn't watch any James Bond until I was...
That was technically my dad's game. I wasn't technically allowed to play the shooty game.
Nice. But before we get into Spy Kids, Chris, what are we drinking today?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have the technology to reconstitute and hydrate with our microwave McDonald's Happy Meal. So we're going for good, clean water.
Cheers.
Cheers. Delicious and not rehydrated.
No. What's so rehydrating us?
That's true. Oh man, the technology in this movie is just so good. We're gonna get to it.
Yes. So, the opening of Spy Kids, I think is... I kind of forgot how it opened. I remembered a good chunk of the later part, but this opens up in a very dramatic, like, almost...
It's almost like adult TV spy movie.
Yeah, where like it's like that wistful looking over the ocean, over the cliffs, and it's all just like all for bedtime stories.
And as an adult who now spends way too much of my free time looking at architecture and judging people's homes, this home is the greatest home to ever be in a spy movie. I don't care about the James Bond mansions anymore. This is my new dream house. It is on a cliffside. It's implied that we're somewhere like, you know, exotic and like fun.
California, Mexico.
Somewhere.
More likely California.
Probably. We know that most of this movie was filmed in Texas. So like that kind of ruins the appeal a little bit. Sorry, Texas. But this mega mansion house, and they are sharing a room, but it doesn't feel that like bad because like this room's gigantic.
Mm-hmm.
They have their own ensuite bathroom with fancy tile. As an adult, I'm frothing at the mouth. As a child, I didn't remember any of this part of the movie.
Yeah.
Blocked it out.
Yeah, well, and I think that says a lot about us as kids because, one, this scene is setting up the two main characters.
Mm-hmm.
Carmen, the daughter, is more interested in the romanticism and
she's very romantic.
And thinking that the happy life is boring in the end. Whereas Junie is that geeky brother with warty fingers who needs monsters in his story still to make it exciting.
Yes.
Which we kind of get monsters.
We do. We get monsters.
But that's more so in the second one.
We get better monsters in the second one, I would argue.
Yeah, because I think how the movies go is this one is definitely a Carmen movie. She's the main.
She is 100% the main character, and Junie, despite having a large portion of it, his arc is just not as impactful as Carmen's.
Whereas, like, by the third movie, Junie it's his story.
100%.
Yeah. But it's little things in the story that show up too, like, Ingrid in the story has her mind, like, elsewhere during her mission. She's holding a magazine that says Child Today. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, there's
these great little bits for the adults to catch.
Yeah, just little things here and there. And then, like, also the goofy gadgets from the start, the gum tracker that...
My God. The gadgets are from the beginning so good. They're so wild and fanciful, but they have this wonderful, fantastic quality where you could feel like they are real in the most unbelievable way, right? Like, it feels like future technology that we're on the cusp of having.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, well, yeah, maybe somewhere that's a thing. And so, like, of course the spies have it. And granted, I know this movie pulls a lot from the Bond franchise, and Bond is famous for having a slew of gadgets, but I feel like a lot of the spy movies have a small arsenal of the spy gadgets, and the rest kind of relies on the espionage and the fighting and the action. And this movie is almost non-stop new gadget.
Well, okay, I'm going to argue against that, because I think this one does rely more on the action than it does anything else, because there are gadgets, and there's a lot of gadgets around.
There are.
But I think they are very minimally used compared to the later films in this franchise, too.
I agree.
It's a nice balance of between the two, I think.
If comparing across franchise, I 100% agree, and the main reason for that is once the second one came out, there was a recognition that it could be more than just McDonald's toys being sold based off of it. So there was a whole line of franchise toys set up before the movie even, like, was going to come out. And I know this because I bought, like, all of them. Okay. I was obsessed. And so, like, that's part of the reason why, like, the later ones were so much heavier in the, like, array and, like, fancifulness and, like, the touch aspect of the gadgets, whereas this one there's a lot of gum-based gadgets.
Yeah.
Or gadgets you can't see, like micro cameras. Doesn't make a great toy. Does make a great movie.
Budgeting issues.
100% budgeting. But you know what? I'm for it. I was 100% convinced and I loved it. But it would make a terrible toy marketing department.
No,
I get it.
Yeah, no, I can completely see it too. And it's interesting going back and looking at this as an adult too, because the beginning is very comedic more for the adults than it is kids, because like they're the parents flirting in the story of like them being at the same cafe but at opposite sides
and just staring at each other with nothing between them, pretending that no one will notice. And
it does pull from I think the what this movie also has going for it too, especially with these comedic times, is he's able to make them tense, but also has that little flair of comedy. At times he makes me think of like a Mexican version of Takashi Miike, where it's like there's that tension, but it's comedic at the same time.
I completely agree, and I think one of the other things that this movie was praised heavily for was that it balances very dark things with a nice light humor, all from a kid's point of view. And I think you even get to see that a little bit at the beginning. The parents make it very clear that this was a very big mission that they were risking. it's done in a lighthearted way, it's done in a kid-friendly way, but as an adult, it's very easy to see that with very good acting.
Yeah.
That, like, there is more at stake than just, like, a fun, silly adventure.
Yeah, and while also setting up that marriage is scarier than being a spy, but it does makes it, here's where it has some nice heart to it too. Good partners reassures that with a single look that this is the right choice, but it also makes me question a lot of things is, who are they spies for if they're enemies?
Unknown. It doesn't make sense. Okay, so...
Do they defect to America? Or does one of them have to defect to America? Or, like, what? It makes no sense, because, like, their wedding gets crashed.
It does. It gets crashed.
Amazingly cheesy way. The heart-shaped parachutes and the just-married escape boat, they knew this was happening.
It's beautiful. Okay, so... While it is never directly said in any of the movies, as far as I could find, or the Netflix special 2 seasons out, I will admit I have not read all of the novels.
There's not... Jesus Christ, I didn't even know there were novels.
There are, and granted, the first novel that came out, I did read, because again, I was obsessed and I was a big reader as a child. And that one is literally just a word-for-word retelling of the movie. Like most books that came out for the movie, honestly, since the 60s and 70s. Like, I have a whole bunch from 70s and 80s that are literally just a word-for-word retelling of, like, my favorite one being the Shaggy DA. It's terrible. It is literally word-for-word, and it's not even like, oh, the precursor. It's literally the script from the movie.
Yeah. I have a couple screenplays that I picked up, and just someone transcribed the...
It's 100% that, and I love that they've literally just removed the, like, who says which line from the front part of the script, and they just printed the text. And that book was very much like that. I know there's a few newer ones, and I haven't read them. I'm sorry, I didn't have time. But I do know from what little research I could find from other people who are just as big as Spy Kid fans as apparently I am now, that this is not a, like, real world, and not in, like, the kid fantasy way, but in, like, a potentially we diverged from history at some point sort of way.
Okay.
It's implied loosely that this is, like, at some point World War II got messed up, and now the world borders look a little different, because the parents work for OSS, which is the precursor to the CIA.
Okay.
Granted, in one of the novels, they claim that it's a different acronym, it's a different, like, company, which is Organizations of Super Spies or some nonsense like that.
Do you think, if this is a deviation, do you think the catcher that was a spy also took place in this?
We don't know. We don't know. But that is the very light world building that someone who read one of these books was able to gift to me.
Jesus.
Because, again, this is much like Carmen Sandiego, like, not a realistic portrayal of anything. It's mostly just spy for action's sake, and Carmen has history slapped on top of it.
It's spy over the core of the movie, because, like, 100%. Well, it does a good job of focusing the beginning of this movie on family, because it's setting up the parents that, hey, all this was worth having children. Parenthood is a worthwhile ordeal. Can we have,
and I know we've already bitched so much and we've barely started this movie, but this is one of the things that really made this movie stand out, is in 2001, the trope was that families hate each other. Husbands and wives do not like each other. They just bitch and moan about each other on TV, during daytime TV. And children are always not happy. Malcolm in the Middle level style, where, like, they say they're happy, but they're really not. This was, for a lot of kids, the first family-oriented movie where the parents were enraptured with each other and truly loved their kids. But in, like, a very realistic way. Like, their dad has worries that his kids aren't, like, they're not going to do well in the life because they have these problems. He's worried about his son not...
Addams Family style.
Yes, 100%. And funny you should bring that up. Another family loosely based, this one very heavily, but Addams Family, loosely based in Latino values as well. So, like, we're seeing a trend here.
Yeah. But I do think that it does get more into it too, because the parents are talking, they're boring consultants now, still in the spy community because they got high tech.
I would say they're out here with their fancy mirrors tip-tapping away on their makeup board.
I thought that was cool as shit as a kid,
cool.
But as an adult, like, looking at that, trying to figure out if your kid accidentally tapped it in the right order, because kids mess with stuff.
Kids 100% mess with stuff. Yeah, no, even as an adult though, the way the gadgets function in this movie looks cool, it feels cool, and yes, the CGI is a little tiny bit dated, but it still looks good.
Oh, it's fun. But it's also like they're doing all this stuff, high tech stuff, while having their evening discussions of, hey, Carmen's not doing well.
Yeah,
and it's just like
Junie's still struggling. Like, both of their kids have problems. Neither one of them is the perfect child, and I appreciate that. And
all that gets cut off real quickly as we start building the spy mystery early on too. Which, as I'm watching this, I'm sitting there and thinking, this is just Spy Family if they knew
what they were doing.
Or if they, granted, I'm not super far into Spy Family. I've only gone through volume 1.
Okay, I've gotten a little farther than you then.
But it's basically the same like kind of setup where it's the dad's spy, mom also a spy, but they know each other. Carmen is the girl, Anya, and then the boy...
You're gonna put Junie as the dog?
Junie's the dog.
I would argue that Carmen is most certainly not Anya. One of those is much whinier.
Okay, at least in like...
But no, in a Spy Family, just not the name of the show, but just in general, I see where you're going, where it is kind of similar where like, you have this supposed happy family and the spying is the problem. And when it comes down to it, in both instances, the part that's the problem isn't the spying, it isn't the assassinating, it isn't the mind control / mind reading, and it isn't the future predicting dog. It's the secrets we keep from each other as a family.
See, I didn't know the dog can predict the future either.
Okay, well...
Spoilers.
Honestly, not really, because they kind of tell you really fast. You just haven't gotten there yet.
No, I don't think I've even gotten to the dog.
So, okay, I was going to say, I think they tell you when they introduce the dog.
Okay. I'll get caught up.
You have literally one more episode to read, and you will know the dog can mind read, or future tell, whichever one you want.
Yeah, I'm more interested in a series about a world made of garbage.
I understand.
Yeah. But now it's training time for the kiddos. And
I love this because it does feel like age appropriate in a way.
Dude, I thought this was super cool as a kid, and I always wanted to have like my own at-home jungle gym. Same. But it's also another little like quick scene to establish Carmen as
she's the sporty one,
athletic. Junie is more on the techie side, but we get a little bit more of that later.
He's very imaginative, and I appreciate that this movie leans into like that's what his strength is that he's very creative.
Well, and here's the great thing about it too. A lot of this starts making more sense after reading that Rodriguez envisioned this as a movie written by a kid, shot, edited, directed, all by a child.
And honestly, the other thing that helps a lot is the fact that Rodriguez wrote, edited, co-composed, directed, co-produced this movie. This man was in the only thing he wasn't in is inside the movie. He didn't act it. That was kind of it.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's okay.
But he also didn't want the kids to be like your typical kids, kind of like what we saw in Home Alone. He's like, he doesn't want the kid movies to be like, he didn't want the kids in the movie to be kids you want to smack around, so he made them likable. He made them a little younger, because he said like 12 to 13 would have been that range where like they get really annoying because they're a little bit more confident in who they are, developing that personality some more.
Well, and I think he did a great job of creating two very different siblings who still feel and act like siblings. They don't hate each other's guts, they annoy each other, but that's pretty normal for siblings.
Yeah, well written siblings this entire movie though, that's the thing.
And the way that this relationship is maintained and then grown is so incredibly smooth and well written. It is truly mind-boggling that this movie isn't more well praised for how well written it is. These children are written so well and also acted so well, which is, as we've talked about, very difficult to do. Kids in general and teens in general are hard to get to act.
And on top of that, while we're establishing these characters, we're building up the spy mystery of missing agents, and then this is where we get the weird with the as an adult rewatching this, Floops Fooglies. Nice way to call them fugly.
Yeah. But like, there's a lot of little things that as a child, it's just a silly word. And then as an adult, you're like, sounds a little bit similar to stuff. I like it.
Yeah.
And it's not done in a way where like the tidbits are left for the adults to keep them hanging on, which is honestly kind of the Disney Pixar way of doing things usually, especially now, where the movie is so strongly for the kids, but a lot of like bits are left for the adults to keep them kind of strung along to pay that $8 or $15 for the movie ticket. This one truly feels like, the parents, if you're here, great, but all of this is for the kids, but it's well written, it's well done, and you just will happen to enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I can definitely like see that, where even though like his intent was for it to be a movie for kids by kids.
Yeah. It's like if you do something well enough, even an adult will like it.
Mm-hmm. But there are like little weird bits here and there that I do like that they do get brought up, but like Junie being able to mimic anyone basically.
Yes, and I appreciate also that like they have this home gym routine where like Junie, despite being the supposedly weaker one, can just hurl a weight at his sister and it's not a big deal because they've been doing spy business since they were little and just don't know it.
No, exactly. But also like building the family dynamic of also the dad being disappointed kind of in Junie's interest, where he's like, you're a Cortez.
You can do this. But like, and then realizing that like, of course Junie doesn't understand what it means to be a Cortez. He doesn't know y'all are spies.
No, well, and on top of that, just like, but that's the nice thing about it too, is it's not about being a spy that makes the name Cortez something to be proud of. It's just being a Cortez. Again,
yes, and we will get to it at the end when we've added a family member.
Yeah, but tying it back into that whole thing of like why I can see this movie being such a big thing for the Latin community of like you're proud to be a Latino, not
and you're proud to be in this family. And yeah, it especially for a kid that's just starting to hit that teenage years, like that is a hard thing to recognize. You want your independence, and especially for a kid like Junie, you're embarrassed by your faults.
Yeah. Or on the other side, Carmen being tired of being the oldest sister, like, oh, I have to look out for Junie all the time.
Yeah.
But I also like the daydream sequence we have here with the dad.
Yes.
Where
he thinks about throwing the guy through the window. And his son running to his arms.
But that's the thing, is like he's looking for his child's praise a little bit. He wants to be that cool dad, but he can't.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
And all of this in 12 minutes of just building the family and the issues they have going on before we even get really to Floop's Island, where the T-1000 is disappointed in Floop's experiments.
And,
I forgot to mention he's in it too.
Oh yeah, by the way.
Yeah. But I do like that the way they set this up is a creative taking advantage of the government for their money.
Where he's literally just using them so he can create his kids' TV show.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. And I also like that I do think they captured the scary dynamic of Willy Wonka that he had wanted to pull very well for this character. Because especially in the beginning, it is hard to recognize if he truly just wants to make this kid's TV show, or if he is truly plotting world domination.
Exactly.
Like it is a very dark and scary gray area. And I think they do a great job, especially when, if you turn the lights down on Whimsy Fun Castle, it's very scary.
Well, they do a good job of setting him up as the bad guy, because he's always he's calling Minion over to help him.
I love that the character's name is Minion.
For now.
It's so on point.
But also we get introduced to like the really weird stuff of this movie, like the thumbs, which I thought were cool as a kid.
And as an adult, you're like, oh, why did I ever like these?
Yeah, but I guess maybe because I did like Thumb Wars and I watched this around the same time as like Kung Pao. So yeah.
But also, I think it's just a kid thing to accept that level of crazy.
But that's what I think is cool about them too, is these came from an art contest that Rodriguez won back at like when he was 13 years old. So it's like,
it's perfect then.
Yeah, he's bringing in his inner kid into this movie and like the things that he created to life.
And I will say that especially because of the advertising, where unfortunately thumbs were shown maybe more than necessary, a lot of adults, I think, still remember the thumbs and remember this movie as a very kid-heavy movie because it has the ridiculousness of it. And it has, at times, like, the over-the-top silliness that kind of reminiscences of, like, Teletubbies in a way. Or Bebops, or whatever those were called. The British version.
I think it's mainly the Fooglies that do that.
The Fooglies 100% are given Teletubby energy. And so I think a lot of adults, especially in their memories, if you'd watched it as a kid and you haven't seen it since, in your head, you remember thumbs, you remember Fooglies, and you kind of remember kids and, like, some random stuff. And so it feels like this is a very silly, like, I will not be rewatching it. In fact, I know this because my husband took one, looked at it, and went, no, I've seen it once. And I was like, when did you see it? When it came out in 2001? And he was like, yeah, I don't really want to see it again. It's weird. And guess who stopped playing his game on his own accord to finish watching the movie? Because it's genuinely good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, the thumbs definitely made for by kids. But at the same time, they kind of work. They have that weird dark dystopia sort of vibe. They're still kid-friendly, technically, but in that weird, I don't understand it sort of way.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the dark thing about it, too, is that creates this army of spy kids, effectively creating robot child armies.
He creates a robot child army, which does sound like maybe we need to update the Geneva Conventions because of this.
And the robots.
Again, we're in an alternate timeline here, so maybe that is part of it now.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
But there's also like little bits of comedy in there too, where it's like showing that the experiments are going poorly, with the one dog tag name being X52495 the second.
The second.
So there's been multiple rounds of these robots going around.
We need to talk about his file naming system. It's really bad. And even he looks at it, he's like, boy, we need to work on the naming. And lets him go. Well,
and to the T-1000's credit in the writing of it is like, this does sound like a dumb idea on paper, especially since they don't have quote-unquote brain power. Like, they'd be unstoppable if only they had a brain, because they're the Tin Men from The Wizard of Oz.
They do, and I also really like that this movie, without even leaving room for question, automatically, like, leads the audience to believe that a self-thinking soldier is better than a mindless robot.
Mm-hmm.
There's not even room in this movie for them to be like, well, why don't we just tell the robots what to go punch? It's like, no, if they had a brain, they'd be much better. You wouldn't have to tell them what to punch. They would just do it.
Yeah, they'd be programmed to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, but yeah, no, I mean, it is a dumb and silly idea that you would think a kid would think of.
Oh, 100%. But it's also clever enough that as an adult watching this, you think, yeah, actually, children robots are kind of the best way to infiltrate a, like, enemy, like, country.
Yeah.
Because who's gonna shoot the children? Like, that's the dark thought that an adult would think. But it works in this instance because this is a kids movie for kids. The bad guy should be children.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a couple Children of the Corn that we've reviewed.
Oh, yeah.
I'm also thinking of, like, who could kill a child, or
there's a lot of instances.
Yeah, well, that's the name of the movie, and then also, like, Beware Children at Play, of all, like, homicidal children movies.
This is true, and just, spooky ghost children in general have been a horror staple for since the beginning of horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that's the thought that an adult would have. A child would be like, oh, you're gonna fight your clone self, Link's, like, Legend of Zelda style. Yeah. Of course. Well, gotta set that up from the beginning.
Yeah, and I think they do a good job of showing us that, hey, behind this one little clip we saw of a children's show, there's something a little bit more sinister. And
especially for the age range that this really is targeting, which is that preteen sort of era, that's kind of the age where most kids start getting interested in the, like, there's more to it sort of TV shows, now YouTube and books and things like that. Like, that's the prime age range where, like, oh, I figured out the secret code. It was Morse code. It's like, it's always Morse code, honey. Everyone at this point knows Morse code.
Oh, you're talking about, I think it's Gravity Falls that did that or something.
Gravity Falls has, like, every Nancy Drew game known to man. Oh. Like, literally, if you were a puzzled child who thought you were going to expose the secrets of the universe, you taught yourself Morse code. For no damn reason. Because, of course, it's never going to be Morse code. And then you also taught yourself, like, a bunch of other, like, oh, if the square is in a dot formation like this, that means it's the letter A. And it's like, okay, look, it's not going to be... The government is not held together by basic children enigmas.
And then there's Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire and Emerald that tries to have you learn Braille to solve some puzzles.
Yes.
But you know what? The special flute that you get, that they would have given you to get Arceus, that was too complicated. Learn Braille a generation before, kids.
Yeah. The amount of PhDs I probably now possess from Nancy Drew games is egregious, but that's okay. Because we were those kids. Like, we thought that was, like, truly a deep mystery that no adult had ever solved before. And so having this, like, oh, there's bits where, like, if you play it backwards, they're calling for help. And it's a dark and scary. I'm surprised no one has noticed that this is a secret. This is the perfect age range for it.
Well, it makes me think of kind of, like, how people overlook stuff. And I know there's one I need to see, and I know it gets really, really dark. But I was put off by the artwork, Made in the Abyss.
Yes.
Which
you will like.
I know, I've been told I will. But, like, it starts off bright and cute and cuddly. Same with, like, Madoka Magica Girl, where it's all this, like, beautiful, pretty aesthetic in the front of it. But when you start getting into it, it's really dark. Or like one of my favorite game series, the Etrian Odyssey franchise, where the first time I played it and finding out that at the end, it's like, oh, this is a post-apocalypse game. It's like, oh shit, that is a cool turn.
This is the entry drug for those sorts of later on older teens who then are like really into it. This is awesome. Like, this is the entry because you can start like piecing it together and you think you've cracked the code. And this age range, this like 8 to 15-ish year old age range that this movie was heavily targeting, having like the bad guys be your own self, but robot form. They're stronger, they're better, they're faster, they have jetpack shoes.
Yep. Yeah, I have it written later on that it's like Shadow Link.
It's exactly like this is everything a kid would possibly think of. But because all of those themes then carry on into adult media, adults now sit there and go, oh my god, what are the implications of this while they're watching this children's movie? Because it's well written, it's well acted, it's honestly fairly nice to look at most of the time. Yeah. You're not looking directly at the thumbs.
It's not obnoxious in its presentation.
Exactly.
And even then, like when we do go back to the Cortezes, and Daddy's on a mission now, it's a personal request on top of that, so it shows like, hey, the only way they'll come out of retirement is personal request, but it also is this like little hint of like, hey, sometimes like your kids are important, but you need to pursue your own interests sometimes. Yeah.
Also, small fun fact that I managed to dig up, the personal request comes from the head of the OSS, right? Their organization, which definitely isn't supposed to be the precursor to the CIA. And his name is Donegan Giggles, which is a direct reference to the actual director from the time period of the OSS, William Joseph Donovan.
Nice.
So, maybe this is an alternate timeline.
With silly names.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do like that, like, there's got those little bits, too, for the parents that are worked in. Not just in, like, the messaging, but, like, when she's like, if you take me on the mission, and then whispers in his ear, it's like, ooh, it is James Bond and its level of like, oh, tee-hee, but only to the parents. Because nothing ever actually is like shown. Even the like makeout scenes in this are very like 12-year-old girl idea of a makeout where it's like, ooh, smooch, 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 smooch. Oh, I love you so much, smooch, smooch. And like nothing is more, but it's there enough that an adult audience would fully understand how enamored these two are with each other. Yeah, and I'll get to that in like towards the very end, because there's a couple other interesting things he does around that too. To make it 100% that kids movie, to pick it up on something really cool there.
Yeah.
But this is where we get Uncle Felix.
I love Uncle Felix because what is this? Okay, I love that the running gag in this movie too is that everyone's mustache is fake.
Yeah.
Because as a child, 100% I had a box of fake mustaches that I thought were like going to like, I'm gonna need them.
Yeah.
Don't know why.
Or like your spy glasses and stuff.
Yeah, like you had these like kid fake toys, and of course the fake mustache is amongst the arsenal.
Yeah, because we also had Codename Kids Next Door. Like there was
the spy franchise was at its peak right now.
I'll take your word for it.
It was. If you were a spy kid interest phenomenon, you had a plethora of toys, shows, movies.
Kim Possible, Totally Spies. And I'm talking like this is like 3 years later when I moved, or 2 years later when I moved back to the States. So
it was honestly a long-running stint of being into spies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like a lot of our parents were like, oh, you're at the age where you could watch some of the older Bonds. Not the new Bond, that might be a little bit much, but you could watch the 80s Bonds. That one's not too bad.
Actually, this is about the time I watched. Oh shit! What was the Bond? There was a Bond with Halle Berry in it, so it's about the time I watched this. So
yeah, I'm telling you what, this movie came out at the perfect time.
Okay, but I do also like that it leans into like the spy tropes with the great car, or the car that goes into the water. They're dressed in all black.
It's so cool looking. It's so unrealistic, but it doesn't matter. It feels like it could be real.
And immediately the mom's worried about like the kids right away. She's like, what? I hope they're fine. I miss them already. And it's like, you've been away for like
4
10
seconds.
minutes maybe.
Yeah.
But also ramping up the danger real quick that, these great spies, they got caught right away.
Yeah, and they're rusty. They haven't been doing this in 10 years.
The family's under attack with alerts everywhere in case you missed one.
But also I love how the uncle quote-unquote uncle has to change the channel he's watching to the alert channel because he turns it on and it's on his show still.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And of course he's got 2 go bags that are the dopest looking go bags for these kids, just these leather backpacks that look like Indiana Jones himself packed them. Oh, so cool.
Well, it's also like, it leans into like it's super cool, but the kids are like, our parents can't be spies. Our parents aren't cool.
Yeah, which also like, look at your parents, kids. Look at your parents. Look at your friends' parents. Mm-hmm. Really? Yeah. Are you sure? Like...
Well, it's also setting them on the quest, too, of finding the OSS and delivering. But I can also believe this, too, because when they go to evacuate, they open it up, and it's become a spare closet. It's basically Narnia to Spy World.
And I do love that, like, when you watch it as a kid the first time, like, you think, well, why do they have a secret hallway and then stuff to hide the rest of the secret hallway? And it's not until you're an adult where you're like, no, they've just using their secret hideout as storage. Because that's what you do as an adult. Exactly.
And I do like that it's been earlier on, but it's even further established that Carmen is taking control, whereas Junie is that comedic relief character.
But it also kind of leans into their whole roles as like the younger brother he's always nervous, he's never sure of himself, and Carmen has had to become very sure and like she feels like she has to protect him. Right now she kind of regrets it, she kind of hates that that's her responsibility. But, like, she steps into those shoes really well. And I think it's well written for, like, a sibling dynamic. Because, yes, Junie annoys her. And, yes, Carmen bossies and bullies Junie just a little bit. But it's done in, like, not in an overly caring way, but in a realistically way. Yeah. They call each other silly names.
Yeah, they've gotten tired of each other in the day-to-day. It's just things you deal with.
Exactly.
I mean, even when they do escape, it's a pretty cool, like... vehicle that they're in and whatnot.
It is.
I mean, even their hideout's cool. It's just like, they're like, oh, what is this pile of junk? And then they open it, it's like, okay, it's cool. It's got refreshments, automatically supplying refreshments. And just like, I love that it's Junie automatically gravitates towards the gadgets.
Yes, he very much is like his father that we learn in a little bit, where he's also an inventor.
Exactly.
Because like she hands him like a 8,000 page, you know those pages to that manual are paper frickin' thin. They're like Bible insert sheets, and she's like, "Here, read this," and he skips apparently 1 chapter. Yeah. But manages to learn enough.
Oh, that's later on.
Yeah,
that's
coming up.
Yeah. I was thinking about like the little spy manual that they have, which...
When she hands him a spy manual, he reads it in like 10 minutes, and he's like, all right, good to go.
I love that the spy manual is all, like, they're always so small for no reason.
It's so tiny. It's for you to put in your pocket for later.
Why? Like,
I don't know, just a reference in the field, I don't know. But no, it is interesting that a lot of the gadgets that Carmen seems to be able to pick up very quickly, like... both of them seem adept at being able to pick up gadgets quickly, but it's Junie's creative thinking that later on leads to it. Like, neither of them is solely good at athletics and solely good at smarts. They're both kind of good at both, but one just excels a little bit more.
Yeah, just a little bit.
It's a nice balance, because it also means they are slightly more realistic spies.
And also, I do, like, they're bringing up the Machete BuddyPacks.
I love that.
The money from... All 10 countries, yes.
Which, again, leads to the theory that this is an alternate timeline where World War II happened differently.
So no African countries exist? Because I think all the money is like...
it's all European countries.
European, Chinese, and Korean, I think. So look, Chinese.
Look, I don't know how the theory works. All I know is that, like, it's the only theory I've found on this stupid movie.
Yeah, well, it's also a moment to slow down and... give us some, like, time for them to really worry about their parents, which also the instant McDonald's product placement
it's
is
beautiful. Because we all had, like, had the toys, like, before the movie came out. Why wouldn't there also be McDonald's?
Yeah, and I wonder if that's just kind of like a branding thing of, like, you have to have a little bit of a product placement for whatever... If it
wasn't McDonald's, there would have been like a water bottle somewhere with the logo burned into our eyeballs.
Oh god! At least they try. Like, it's only on screen for like 10 seconds.
It is, and also it does still fit with the thing. Like, it doesn't feel like pressed or anything. Like, they're kids. They have a pantry full of honestly mostly junk food because it's shelf stable. But they choose to reheat McDonald's. Because they're children.
That's their tech. They can have McDonald's whenever they want.
And honestly, as a child, I would have eaten the hell out of some rehydrated McDonald's whenever I wanted it. So, like, Yes, it's a brand deal, but it also fits. It doesn't feel like I'm staring down the face of a Chevy truck commercial, you know?
Yeah. But it's also, while we get that moment for the kids to slow down, it's a nice moment to transfer back to the parents who are worrying about the kiddos, which
yes.
I do like that they're still rusty. I mean...
Yeah, no, it makes sense. They haven't done this for 10 years. They've just been consulting and going to soccer games.
Yeah. Well, and there's also, like, the cool parts of them trying to escape with, like, the gadget ring, the puzzle trap for the floor.
Which is, the gadgets in this don't make sense. But they're really good. And honestly, I'm kind of disappointed that the new Bond movies have leaned more towards realistic gadgets. Because these gadgets are way more fun. Yeah. This is cool.
Yeah, well, and even like we don't see a lot of this in, I feel, the later movies either. But like even Floop's mansion personifies Floop, where...
Oh, it's so whimsical, but also slightly evil.
It's Gaudi-esque, too.
It is. And like, it has... the organicness that as an adult, as an architect, you think to yourself, I guess maybe it could work.
Because it's sculpted. It's supposed to feel sculpted from clay. Or molded to clay.
Which is where you get the Gaudi influence, for sure.
Yep, 100%. But I love that even, like, as a kid, you know that they were allowed to escape. And, like, the virtual room being the obvious trap of, like, hey, here's arrows to this room, guys.
It's so obvious, but at the same time, it's satisfyingly done. The acting doesn't feel cheesy or watered down in any way. You enjoy the adventures of the virtual room, because, like, yeah, it's the obvious trap, but also, like, I kind of want to know what's in there.
Yeah.
Like, what's the virtual room in 2001?
Way more advanced than anything we even have today, I'd say.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I mean, technically green screen room, kind of.
Yeah, but this one has a moving floor bit to it, too.
Yeah, and it's
also somehow can also override you, because, like, later on, Floop's, like, a giant head floating in the sky.
He's a god in his own world.
You know what? Good for him.
Like,
he's living my dream.
He's just a giant dude in a cloud.
You know, that sounds great.
But I do like that when they do get recaptured, we get that bit of, like, really driving more of the dynamic of Floop and Minion. Where Floop is, you can tell he's not the brains of the operation. Minion is.
100%.
Because he's, like, Minion's starting to feed him everything of, like, by the way, here's the kids' names. You're just kind of the face of this. I'll back you up for it.
And we also start to, like, be able to listen and appreciate the music, because we get Floop's evil villain song, which... the moment it played, my husband took his headphones off and went, Danny Elfman? And he's right. Danny Elfman. Yeah. Not all of the music was Danny Elfman. This was a joint adventure. Danny wrote some songs.
You said Robert Rodriguez worked on it.
He did. He also wrote a few songs. And then John Demby also wrote a few songs. So, like, it was a joint effort. However, if you are interested, there's, like, a full list of all of the songs and who wrote which one. And it is very clear who wrote which songs.
Okay.
And yeah, the villain song is painfully Elfman style.
Again, I am musically stupid. I don't pick up on some of it, but I feel like I should have picked up on Danny Elfman.
This was one of the ones where, like, this is 2000, this is 2001, this is early 2000s. This is, like, prime Elfman styled music, where, like, all of his stuff just sounds like a variation of Nightmare Before Christmas.
Okay.
And everyone, like, heard it, loved it, was obsessed with it. We put it in everything.
Okay.
It was all over the freaking place. And so, like, that's why a lot of people, like, could hear it and follow up with it. However, I do kind of like that he's not the only music director for this. Having several other people's styles put in kind of helps bump it up to different styles. Like, we have very adventure spy-based music. We have a couple more ballady pieces. We have a few more romantic Latino-style pieces. We have the goofiness of the Wonka-inspired song, which fits, because Elfman later did that music.
Okay. Granted, I
the Johnny Depp one.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen that one since it released. So.
You know what? You're not missing out.
Well, I'll take your word for it.
It's okay.
But I do like we get a little bit more backstory of, like, why it was the Cortezes. Because, like, that's it kind of wraps up the whole mystery of, like, why any of this is happening. It allows it to focus on the rescue mission. Yeah. Because it's like, oh, he was even keeping secrets from his wife.
Which, as we learn, that's a no-no. Families can't have secrets between them.
Supposedly.
Yeah, well, until the second movie, and then the third movie, and then the fourth movie.
Well, yeah,
and then I suppose the fifth movie. I haven't seen that one yet.
Secrets are what drive the spyness of the movie.
And at the end of every one of these damn movies, the lesson that they learn is no secrets between families.
Nope. And I mean, it's cool sculpting skills, showing the fate of Felix.
It is honestly very clever way of like showing this, because it could have been easily done with like a CGI shot thing, which they kind of do, but it's done in like that spy tech sort of way, so it doesn't feel too eyeball burny.
Yeah.
The clay feels like a nice bridge between practical effect and the silly CGI.
And it'll come into play later on too.
Exactly.
We get back to the kiddos who are just gearing up because they can.
You know, for funsies, really. Which, I mean, that makes sense. I would.
Yeah, and I mean, just the quick reveal of like, oh, their bedtime story. Oh, that really was our parents. Okay, our parents are cool. Like, it's the immediate conversion of like,
and I love that it's kind of also implied that like they didn't recognize them from the story because their dad didn't have a tiny mustache on. And now that he's a spy again, he puts the tiny mustache back on his upper lip. It is the tiniest sliver of a mustache known to man.
Isn't that what's the show with the platypus that has the hat?
Perry the platypus.
And doesn't Katie not recognize him without the hat?
Yeah, 100%. Okay. Yeah, but the difference is that's a stupid German man.
Yeah,
he's technically not from Germany, but it's heavily implied that it's German.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Doofenshmirtz. He's a hero of mine. A great inventor.
Okay.
Never managed to take over the tri-state area.
It's good for him.
He keeps trying.
But I do like that the danger keeps mounting because the OSS arrival automatically feels ominous despite their reassurance.
Oh, and 100% a huge part of this is the wonderful spooky acting by Our Lady here, because that smile is too much. The camera angles are all from kid height, which just make the adults look scary because it's kind of like shot from crotch up. And no one looks good from that angle. No one.
No. But I do, it's a good part to it too, because the kid side of the story was kind of starting to stall out a little bit while the parents were having all the action. But,
this adds the momentum we needed.
Yeah, but it's also like giving the kids the parents' fate if they're not rescued. So it's the kids have no one else to turn to but themselves. Again, family has to be important.
Exactly.
But I do like that there's already, like, every time we see a thumb, even when it's in a suit, we know it's a thumb.
So egregiously a thumb, even when in all black ninja suit. Yeah.
And just like weird ass gadgets too, because it's just like it's just
love them.
All over the place. Like we don't even know what they're doing, but they throw them.
Yeah. Oh no, it doesn't. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you don't need to know what it does. You just need to know it's heavy.
Yeah. And also like the childish danger of jumping over the fan that's got a car engine attached, like for the motor.
Yeah. And I love how that is also like one of the only real injuries other than like goofy electrocution and like jetpack to the face.
Yeah.
Is the only real injury that we see full on impact is his hand going into a ceiling blade fan.
No, because here's the other thing too. Junie is so unpredictable because he's clumsy.
Yes.
Remember, he's accidentally handcuffed himself to a toolbox. Yeah. And smacks people around with it.
And it's very like Three Stooges. It's very Charlie Chaplin and like the slapstick vaudevillian style humor, but it works because again, it's for kids. Spy movies inherently have to have some kind of violence. This is a great way to have that without making the children feel too competent, or have it be too violent.
Yeah. Having
lunchbox smacking and a ceiling blade fan to the hand and a jetpack to the face, perfect solution.
Or thumbs running into the walls, because honestly,
I do love the thumbs now.
Honestly, the jetpacks are so cool.
They're so cool. They make no sense. The flying instructions don't look realistic in any way, but I want them. No,
exactly. But I also like in this bit too, there's always like that little bit of humor here and there too, where it's like Robert Rodriguez seems to do this quite a lot in like his style of humor, where he's like, I'm not going to drop you, and then immediately drops him. Yeah.
Yes. It is a very quick to the punch for him and his humor, and I do appreciate that.
And we're going to see that because, spoilers, we're doing a few more Rodriguez movies, so
we couldn't help ourselves.
Buckle up. But I also like how there's so much dumb logic to this movie that you don't question as a kid, because when they do finally escape, they steal clothes that just happen to be in a department store that fit the spy look.
But also are like the most outlandish and ridiculous stuff. And it makes sense, though, because, like, they're essentially playing dress-up. This is what their parents did in that story.
Yeah.
The difference is those are two adult humans who are now looking like suave and, like, business people, and your children dress like business people.
Confidently shoplifting.
Well, no, they have money from all 10 countries.
But do they ever stop to pay? No, it just shows them going from the changing room to leaving the store.
Maybe they prepaid.
Yeah, well, in a shopping rack, too.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
no,
true.
they just straight up stole these
just stolen
clothes.
stuff. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's company card.
Yeah. But this is where we also cut to the creepy show and the Freedom song.
Which is part of the dark humor that a lot of people remember from this movie. And when you rewatch it, especially after having not watched it in a while, it's actually really kind of fun. Because it is creepy.
No.
It's almost as creepy as you remembered it from when you were a kid.
Yeah, I try and forget the Fooglies.
Yeah, I think we all should. But that's kind of the fun of it, because you can't really have true scary or horror in a kid's movie. That kind of defeats the purpose. But this is spooky.
I'm looking at You Land Before Time.
Okay, that was just trauma.
Watership Down is technically a kid's movie.
Look, that one shouldn't be.
Plague Dogs is technically a kid's movie.
Again, that one shouldn't be.
Yeah, there's a...
Look, Don Bluth had a lot of things going on in his life that made a lot of very traumatized children, and he did apologize for it.
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I was watching Jurassic Park before this. So yeah. But I do also like this bit, too, because it's showing that it's giving Floop more of a humanistic approach where he's lamenting that he's not happy. He doesn't even want to be doing this.
It's the slow descent into him not being the villain.
Yeah, something's missing from his show in his life. It's another moment for a minion to show that he is the brain.
He's the one actually running it.
They're just Pinky and the Brain.
Kind of in a way, yes. But whereas, honestly, Pinky's entire existence is just to mess up Brain, and Brain's entire existence is to just try and not live with Pinky, I honestly do think that the way they wrote Floop in this one is he is a genius. He's just very focused on this kids show, which, according to the movie, is incredibly successful.
But what is even... Here's the thing. I don't even know if Floop built this facility. I think Minion needed someone charismatic at
We know
the helm.
Floop didn't build it himself, obviously. That man hasn't lifted a hammer a day in his life. Look at him. But we know he is the one who, like, ordered it from Machete because he steals the plans from Machete later. Machete built it.
Yeah, but so that's the thing is, like, Floop isn't really a genius. He's just...
He is, but just not in the spy sense. He's good at TV. He's a good director.
That's what I'm saying is, like, he's not a genius in regards to, like, the rest of the facility. Like,
no.
You 100% know Minion was the one who, like, planned everything for it.
Probably. Granted, he does have the whole facility memorized, which does lead us to believe that he had some input in the design. I'm sure Minion was the one who installed the, death pit and, like, the acid bath, and there's probably laser sharks somewhere in this damn place. But, like...
Yeah.
I do think Floop had, like, a good deal of influence on it. It's kind of the way it's implied. Especially when you see Minion, like, quote-unquote, take over and how uncomfortable he is.
Floop is probably what engineers see architects as.
Honestly, 100%. I would have no doubt in my mind that this is how my engineers see us.
Yeah, we're on the pretty side of it all.
Yeah, because if you watch Minion later when he has, quote-unquote, taken over, Floop is out of the picture, and he tries to interact with the furniture and, like, the facility that is clearly Floop's, and he's just, like, weaseled his way into. He can't sit in the damn chairs half the time, because it's not for him.
Yeah.
He's not whimsy enough to sit in the silly chair.
Yeah, he has to have it stiff, rigid, robotic.
Yeah, and normal.
I can see it. But when we do get back to the Spy Kids, there was a bit of a horror moment too, I think, where they have like all this, like, any child could be a threat, basically. Which
I do appreciate that, like, at no point in this movie do the robot children ever wear anything other than the gray jumpsuits and the blue shiny eyes. Because I think if they had, like, truly, like, put them in other kids' clothing, it might have honestly been a little bit much for some kids.
Yeah, it's that clear distinction of uniform of, like, kind of into that theory in Star Wars of why the stormtroopers aren't good at shooting the main cast is because the main cast isn't wearing the uniform of the Rebel Alliance, which, fascinating that there's a Rebel Alliance and they have a full on, straight up uniform that's like, who's making this?
Someone.
Yeah.
I don't know. Ewoks? I don't know. I don't know what their free time looks like.
But again, Machete's name keeps appearing up and the mystery continues. Junie's kind of dumb for being a geek too. Of like, he's like, I'm gonna smash the brain.
Again, it's not that he's book smart because Carmen's book smart too. It's that he's creative.
Yeah.
That's the part of him that is like better than his sister.
Yeah, we saw him draw his own floop.
He draws his own floops. Like, he has like the outside of the box thinking where like before Carmen can even like run him through why, he's already come up with a creative solution to all this, and it's just break the brain.
Yeah.
Which is an out of the box thinking in this instance.
Yeah, kind of.
Because the obvious answer is, well, that's our bargaining chip for our parents. And he's like, no, the creative solution is I break this, we find a different solution to the parents.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right. He's smart in his own ways too, where he's like, by the way, that bracelet you have, probably a tracking device, you dumb bitch.
Yeah, no, he is very good at thinking outside the box, and that's where Junie shines.
Yeah.
And they don't really do that great a job in this movie explaining it. I think it's the later ones that, like, Junie gets his better comeuppance, and by that point, he's no longer the creative kid, he's a spy kid.
No, he's a private investigator kid.
So sorry, slight difference.
Recruited back into being a spy kid.
That's true. But it's a nice subtle difference between the two characters, and I think it makes Junie feel more like a real kid.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. It's just it is those dumb kid logics of
it is.
Let's break shit.
Oh no, 100% it is, but also it does keep the plot going.
Mm-hmm. Well, and on top of that, like when the spy kids do show up in like this really cheesy Wheel of Death, but it's also showing that the spy kids are better than the actual human kids.
That's true.
And also, like, they're also just spoon-fed the clues, which, you know...
I mean, it is a kid's film,
I know,
so I'm giving it some grace.
That's why I'm giving it the grace, is because it is supposed to be like a kid's movie. That's the logic of, it's a movie not supposed to have, like, the nuances of, here's the hints in the background. It's a kid being told, and then they found this, and then they found that. But
it's just done a little better.
Yeah, and the one thing I don't get, and maybe it's just something Robert Rodriguez wanted to sneak in for funsies. Okay. But the random kid speaking Spanish about the flying shoes of just
they're in a Mexican speaking town.
I thought they were just in the U.S. basically still.
So it's not super clear on where this actually is.
Okay.
A lot of the shooting did take place in the U.S. I think mostly Texas, California, and New Mexico. However, there was some non-U.S. locations for some of the outdoor shots. And Rodriguez does mention that like he pulled inspiration from his own family and from like his grand ideas of what it could be like. And I mean, even if this is New Mexico or Texas, there's plenty of communities that speak Spanish, so...
Yeah. I don't know, it's just one of those weird things of, like, it kind of took me out a second of, like, just an odd moment.
It is a bit of an odd moment, but once you start looking at this movie as a Latina-influenced movie, like, he doesn't hide anything, especially, like, the end scene where they're back in the kitchen. It is painfully a Latina kitchen and not like a white people kitchen, because there's like a big molcajete right there, there's a bunch of peppers, she's over here like making tortillas, I think it like in the background, or sopapilla, I can't tell, but like it is there is not a microwave to be seen, there is not a kid cuisine to be offered.
Interesting.
Like once you start looking for it, I see why people really praised this for the influence it had, but I think it, with the exception of this one scene, it's just, like, ingrained so perfectly into it that, like, most of us, unless we're looking for it to appreciate it, you don't notice it.
Yeah, I think maybe that's the charm of it, too, is that it feels so natural.
It does, yeah. Okay,
but we get a little bit more on the tech that the brain was supposed to be, like, a spy brain.
Yeah, you know, it's another piece of gadget that's just it was too powerful.
It was supposed to be destroyed, but...
couldn't figure out how to break it because they made it too strong.
Gotta bring it back to the family drama of the secrets have to stop. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, as far as we know, this is the only secret that you guys have. And it's just like, it's a pretty major one for him to actually keep a secret from you guys. Like,
it's true.
You might be a spy too, but you knowing that knowledge puts you in danger.
It is logic that works at the kid movie level.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. And it's just
but also, like, it's a really nice message that we don't see a lot in kids' films. I'm all for the whole, like, no secrets in families as the moral of the story. Mm-hmm. It's better than just, like, some of the other movies where, like, the moral is none. What's the moral? Don't die. Love your parents. Yeah, don't be sad.
That's Home Alone, though. That's
yeah, but
appreciate your family.
Yeah, I mean, similar, but also not, because, like, Kevin's parents, someone needs to call Kevin's parents and, like, have them take a class or something about how to stop leaving your child places.
Well, I mean, look at their not uncle who told them to go take this high-tech equipment that you guys have never touched before.
Was on autopilot to take them to an automatic safe house with automated food.
Then why can't it be disabled?
Because Junie is so weird. He's got warp fingers. They cover this in the movie, Nico. Damn it, Junie.
No, he shouldn't be touching shit.
He shouldn't be touching shit. Carmen told him that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They're bad parents too.
Well, yeah, they did hire a babysitter. The babysitter just turned out to also be a spy.
And also betray them in the third movie.
That's true. So see, he wanted this all to happen. They plotted this from the beginning.
Yeah.
No, they didn't.
No.
But, like, that's okay.
But I do like the kid logic of them not following, like, the only clue that they've been given is, who is this Machete? Which
I love that they gave him the name Machete.
But I also don't know how they found the spy shop either. It's just like...
I feel like it's not that hidden, because they also just walk in and he's making spy crap.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even hidden like everyone else. He's just out here doing it. So it kind of makes me feel like he has a page in the yellow paper, or in the yellow book.
Yeah, I don't know, because, I mean, that's the other thing, too, is, like, this is years before Planet Terror.
Oh, sure, but we definitely still had yellow pages. I feel like there was probably just a big ad in there being like, Machete spy gear.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem subtle. Look at him.
No, I mean, it's Danny Trejo.
No, he's not subtle in any way.
No.
So...
And if I remember right, this was also his way to give him a bigger role compared to his role in From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, I love that Machete has his own movies. He has 2 of his own movies, and a bunch of the cast and crew from the Spy Kids movies are also in the Machete films.
Yeah, a lot of them are also in From Dusk Till Dawn, so...
And granted, it was shut down. Rodriguez was like, no, he's talking out of his ass. But Danny Trejo was caught on one of the only interviews I could find of the man talking about this movie, and how he thought Machete was what Machete, the uncle from Spy Kids, was doing when he wasn't watching the kids. And Rodriguez has shut that down. He's like, no, he's lying to you. That's not what it is.
If I remember right, Machete is like a movie within their world.
It is, actually.
Yeah.
It's referenced from, like, it's like, quote unquote, a movie in a movie. But other than the one referencing the other, they're not related in any way.
No.
It is fun if you're an adult. They are not children movies.
No.
They are starring Danny Trejo, if that, like, confused you in any way.
Yeah.
The other thing that I really liked about this movie that my husband brought up several times is real life Danny Trejo is the same height as you and me.
Huh.
He is not a tall man.
All right.
However, the other actors in this movie, the other adult actors and actresses in this movie are more tall than Danny Trejo. So you never see them at, like, full distance, which does imply that he's on a box for this whole movie.
Yeah, I mean, they do that with Tom Cruise.
They do that. Well, he also has shoe inserts, and I've seen the pictures, and that blows my mind. I don't think there's shoe inserts for Danny Trejo. I think the budget was too small. I think there's just a box that he stands on, and then he's, like, by himself for the rest of the shoots. But, like, that cracked me up really hard, because now I can't watch this movie without imagining him on a little box standing next to everybody else.
It's like real life, or the actual size of Wolverine.
Yeah, where, like, you realize that real Wolverine would have been much shorter.
Yeah. But I do also like that Carmen's long-ass name is the password.
I do too, because, again, it's another little, like, tidbit of Latina humor that, like, is just so well woven into it. And also, she's the first child, so, like, of course, like, they don't have a pet, so the pet can't be the password.
Yeah, and
so your oldest kid's the password for everything.
Yeah, actually, that's a horrible spy system too.
It is, but also, like, how accurate. I asked my dad, like, Dad, what's the password? He's like, it's the same password I have for everything else. Put it in. I'm like, okay, just checking. See if you learned your lesson.
Yeah.
But also, don't change the password, Dad, because I'd never get back on. I'd never be able to connect to the internet again.
Exactly. But I also do like the reveal that he's like, oh, by the way, I'm your real uncle.
Yeah,
like,
that's my brother. And you're like, and he's like, yeah, I have the exact same problems that Carmen does, but instead of handling them like an adult, I'm upset.
Mm-hmm.
But also we learn that there's more to it, there's some espionage dilemma where Machete is selling to anybody. He doesn't have morals, and his brother feels like that's corrupt.
Oh yeah, no, Machete is 100% the
He's
cool
a businessman.
uncle. Well, not just that, he's the cool uncle.
He 100% is.
I there's some funny bits too that I thought it was personally funny where Junie is like, you make the best spy inventions in the world, and it's like, dude, you have been in this world a
5
day.
seconds.
A day, chill, Junie. Like,
but also, like, what a kid thing to say, because literally all the gadgets Junie has interacted with so far have been made by Machete.
Yeah.
And also, like, it's kind of implied he's the only producer of spy equipment in this world.
And also, spy equipment doesn't work the best all the time.
No, he feels a little bit like Acme spy equipment, but it's Machete spy equipment.
Exactly. But I do like that there's some little implied parallels of, well, how Carmen's been acting towards Junie a little bit, is that Machete is what Carmen could eventually become if she turned her back on her siblings without being heavy-handed and like, I was once like you or something like that.
Yeah, no, it's just, it's my brother. I'm so sick of my brother ruining my life.
Well, and on top of that, that he still cares because he's basically giving them how to get to the island without
for free.
Like, without saying, hey, take this jet and fly. He's like, what I would do is I would do this, but I'm not going to let you do that.
Yeah, you're going to stay right here until we can find someone to watch you. That's not me.
Yeah, and even just like, Dad misses you too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do also like that they intercut some of this with also building up Minion and Floop's dynamic, where Floop finally was like, I never believed in any of this. I just wanted to show it. You wanted the army Minion.
Yeah.
But I do like that there's the more backstory of how the government even... I want more of a backstory of how the government even approached Floop, or did Floop approach them of like, hey, I can do this kid show as a disguise to make this facility and make you all these robots and shit.
I 100% want to know more too, because like it very much feels like we were at the tail end of a bigger story here where like Minion has been playing the long con for years now. Like, how did we get this contract?
Yeah.
Has the Floop castle always been here? Is this like a family castle that he's like renovated? Like, what is happening?
It's a fantasy world.
I know, but I could definitely handle more.
But also, when Minion... I completely forgot about Minion's like betrayal and like his...
Yes.
Like,
and like he changes ever so slightly.
Takes off his glasses and moves his hair back. And I could not help but think of Azid from Bleach.
Yes.
Where it's just like he removes the glasses and the hair goes back.
Yes, that's your disguise. Wow, Clark Kent could never.
To be fair, Azid does look cooler. He doesn't look as much of a nerd.
Okay, but I think a huge part of the reason why this character looks like a nerd, especially to the adults, is it's really hard not to look at him, especially once he like quote-unquote transforms into evil Minion as Monk.
Yeah.
Like, this man has played Monk for so long, he's so ingrained in our culture as that's Monk, that like half of us don't even know his real name.
And I butcher his name.
It's just Monk. And so like even when he's playing other characters, and he does a good job, like he's not even like half-assing this, it's unfortunate he just looks exactly like himself.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
It's hard.
It is.
Not everyone can be the chameleon that Gary Oldman is.
Oh, well, there's a lot of prosthetics happening to hide that chin. But
yeah.
but no, like it is unfortunate that like a lot of us see him just as Monk. However, I also think it's kind of like perfect casting, because the only people who are going to recognize him as Monk and find this a little bit humorous are the adults, and the children will not know who Monk is, probably, because it's a boring show for adults.
Yeah.
It's not really a kid's... It's like too much daytime Seinfeld nonsense.
Well, I only watched Monk because it was like the only thing on AFN, so it was like...
The only reason I watched Monk was because my grandma was watching Monk, because it was in between her shows.
Oh.
That's the only reason I watched any of it. And we didn't even want to watch it. She just couldn't find the remote to change the channel.
Beautiful.
Also, it was Dish, and I don't know if she knew how to change the channel.
Or she'd lose the channel.
Well, we couldn't lose the channel because she was watching her soap operas, and it was one of those soap opera shows that lasted forever. I think it was the Lighthouse one.
If she changed the channel, she wouldn't know how to get back to it.
Yeah, she was worried that she'd miss a show, so it'd be better just to have to sit through Monk one episode for her Lighthouse daytime drama show to come back on. And it was always a rerun, too. She'd already seen them all.
Okay.
That's the only reason I watched any Monk as a child, and I can guarantee you it was boring. I would not have voted for Monk. MASH was much more interesting. MASH at least had a helicopter.
Yeah.
And that thing showed up like every other episode.
I mean, I did watch all of Columbo, but Columbo's interesting, though.
You watched Columbo as an adult, though.
Yeah, true.
That doesn't
Am
count.
I becoming a boring adult?
Yeah.
Fuck.
I'm sorry. But yeah, if you find Columbo interesting as a child, that's a sign.
You're either going to be a great detective or a spy.
Or you're going to be a really boring adult.
Columbo's got a trench coat.
Okay, Columbo is a good show. No child on this planet likes Columbo, except maybe me, and I was a boring, weird child. I actively read the dictionary like I was weird.
Fucking nerd.
I was. And so I guarantee you that not a single child watching Spy Kids knew who Monk was. It was just their parents. And me.
Probably. But now it's time to Bominos to Floops, which... I do like that even Junior's like, okay, I'll read it out. Like, he actually has to do the spy,
homework.
Yeah, the spy tech shit, which gives us all kind of like time frame of like, hey, the parallel action of like the brains being made. Mm-hmm. Hey, you guys got to get there quick. Like, we got to wrap this movie up a little bit.
Yeah. You know, the army of children is coming.
And I also appreciate that even though he read the manual and he skipped a chapter, but even then, like,
he can still pilot this entire plane.
Yeah, but even then, like, they kind of suck at this because it's their first mission and they aren't trained as spies. Like, yeah, they've been doing the jungle gym stuff, but that's not spy training.
No, and they haven't realized it was spy training. They thought it was just extra PE class. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, exactly. And also, like, the really cheesy CGI of upgrading the machines where, like, it's the very cartoony of, like, they move and the conveyor belt moves and they shake a little bit.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, yes, the CGI is painful a little bit to look at, but like honestly, like I've watched more adult-based action with a bigger budget CGI that actively burned my retinas when I stared at it. This one looks not great, but at the same time, it doesn't look that bad, especially since a lot of this isn't CGI. Like a surprising amount of this movie is practical effects.
Yeah, but it feels I think the thing is that it feels right compared to some of the other stuff, whereas like I can see kids' movies where it's like, okay, we cut the budget and like we made it as ugly as possible because that's what we could afford to do. Whereas this one is solid, but it's like low budget.
Yeah, and I think the other reason why the CGI doesn't look too bad in this one is, yes, there's a lot of CGI in this movie. It's a kid's spy film. I mean, look at it. But at the same time, like, there's enough practical effects and real sets where, like, there's some grounding, there's some interest, there's some, like, tactilization to this movie that other spy-esque movies for children that we will maybe or maybe not talk about later are almost exclusively CGI and arguably age worse because of that.
Oh yeah, Spy Kids 3.
Yeah, no, having that balance of practical effects with, like, the weird claymen, the clay props, having the sets be real, and then just having these bits of green screen happen around it, or these little bits of editing where, like, ooh, the eyes are glowing, ooh. Yeah, it's not good, but it doesn't look that bad.
Well, because even, like, the thumbs aren't that bad. Like,
they're really not, because they're also not in the movie all the time.
No.
They're kind of just occasionally in there. And then there's even a whole section where the thumb is a rubber suit that Carmen can wear.
Well, and on top of that, like, they're not the dumbest either. Like, they have a little bit of brains to them, even though, like, I wonder if it's a nod because they're wearing the red shirts like OG Star Trek.
Yeah, maybe.
But like they're aware of their surroundings. Like when they're trying to talk to the Fooglies and they come back down and they're surrounded by thumbs. It's like,
yeah, they're not completely stupid.
Exactly. But then I also like where they bring back up like the little things that like the floor falling out from under them and actually falling through.
Yes,
like,
it's a nice like reprise.
Reprise, and also diverting expectations because like, okay, we saw that before.
Yes, and we were waiting for the splat. Because the splat was kind of funny the first time.
Yeah, but not this time.
No, now she's falling.
I also wonder like how like when they got in line with the Spy Kids realized that they were behind them.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just stupid little things to move the plot along, I guess. And also, like, Junie, like, the apple falling not far from the tree, where Junie falls for the same trap of the virtual room.
Yeah, but also, like, what kid wouldn't?
But it's a good heart-to-heart moment with Floop of, like, he's actually kind of a good guy, even though he's gone and terrifying.
Yeah, he's Willy Wonka terrifying, but not in, like, the evil mad guy way, just in the, like, I want to make children happy so much it's weird way.
Yeah, just a bit. Also, this room.
Yeah.
can only be opened from the outside.
It seems like a very bad design.
Minion, 100% definitely designed this to trap people in.
100%. There's no doubt in my mind that, like, the engineer behind this room was like, so you don't need a doorknob on this side? Because, like, we can make a flat one. Mm-hmm. Like, you wouldn't know it's there. And Minion's like, no. It'd, I don't know, mess up something. Don't do it.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, this seems terribly inconvenient. But okay. Yeah. I mean, you've been sitting on this trap for how long? Long enough to have a whole franchise.
Yeah, a regular syndicated TV show.
With toy launch.
All right, and cereal. And also, like, it's gone on long enough that you're worried about having to add characters. And not just in the, like, ooh, I need to capture more spies and turn them into weird claymen. But in the, like, oh, my programming's not doing well. We're going to lose our prime spot. Yeah, that's what's funny about, like, the Fooglies is they start off as, like, these, like, okay, kid show. They're creepy, kind of ugly.
Yeah.
And then they're just kind of like this product of convenience. It's like, okay, well, this is how we can dispose of our spies.
Yeah, okay, well, I guess it's like kind of like recycling in a way.
Like Picton and his pig farm.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I do like where, like, we get the little bit of, like, okay, Alex, like, Minion's real name in Dark Past is Alex.
Yes.
And, like, this is just, I mean, I get why we have to do it. We have to explain through exposition to, like, okay, this is why we should be afraid of Alex. He's trying to take over the world, basically. But
it feels like a classic villain monologue, so I don't really care that, like, we're having this backtrack and plot, because it fits the stereotype of, like, oh, our heroes are tied to a chair dangling above the lava, and now you have to monologue. It's kind of required to be an evil villain.
Yeah. But it also has, like, the bit of, like, showing that, hey, he's not creative, of, like, he can't do his own, like, clay work. He has to use Junie's fan art.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's also, like, some things I like in the background where, like, the thumb hospital where in the background there's
a lady pinky finger taking care of them.
In a sexy nurse's outfit.
With a red painted nail. Stiletto and everything.
Exactly.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, the nail style is also called a stiletto, which is a fun play.
Which is also is named after the knife stiletto from the Italian knife fighting style.
Exactly.
Stabby stab.
Works.
But when we do get back to Junie and Floop, I think there's something I don't really care for this part in it, just because it's just like Floop's like, my show's I know it's a part to, like, give Floop some meaning to stick around, where Junie's like, I'll help you, but your show's missing kids. You're making a show for kids, like.
And unfortunately, it's a little on the nose, because you know what all the other weird actual children TV shows that have, like, the weird creatures ended up adding to their shows?
Kids?
Real children.
Dinosaurs did it.
I guess not.
But it had kid dinosaurs.
Yeah, but I mean, even Barney had real children on it.
I thought, yeah, Barney always had real children, didn't it?
I think eventually, like, the Barney we know, yes. OG Barney, I think, was just Barney and maybe BJ. Or PJ? I don't know. I watched Barney for 1 year of my life, and that was enough.
I had a little bit of lamb chops, and that was about it.
I loved lamb chop. Again, also ended up with real children on the show.
Oh, great. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it makes sense. She's puppet master-tier. Gotta have children to puppet to, But no, like, it is a common trope in children's media, especially not animated media, where you have, like, quote-unquote real things, like Teletubbies.
Okay.
Eventually incorporating real children's segments into the show. And a lot of it comes from, like, children's psychology and, like, TV work, where we know that, like, that is good for children. They like having and seeing children on their own shows.
Teletubbies always had a child on the show.
The Sun doesn't count.
The Sun does too count.
The Sun kind of counts. But they also had segments where they would flip away from the children and, like, show real life children playing across, I don't know, fields in England and bullshit like that. Huh. But yeah, no, it was just part of, like, now we know children's psychological, like, TV production. Your TV show for children will do better if it has bits with children in it.
Okay.
So it kind of worked out in, like, a realistic sense. Like, yeah, the thing missing from your kid show is actually probably children.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Never thought of it that way.
I find children's, like, entertainment so fascinating, because there's an entire, like, group of people who's dedicated their lives to researching what makes good children entertainment.
Yeah. And it's culminated in Cocomelon.
No, it hasn't. I would say that Sesame Street is maybe the pinnacle of it, but
I know people like Bluey too.
They do, but there is a whole team of people behind Sesame Street who actively research like what they should do to like create good content for children. And in a lot of ways they pioneered like children's content, like what is good, what is interactive, what is well taught.
This movie itself.
Yeah.
You gotta have children in the front of it to sell for kids. Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and like kids will watch a show and interact better if they see other children their own age on the show.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, I'm sure a coincidence, but I found it very interesting that it ended up being a real fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, the movie does really pick up for like the last 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, a lot of action.
Yeah, we have the dungeon, which the heart-to-heart with Carmen offering her issues and speaking, like she wants to sought freedom, and she traveled to other countries.
Yes.
Without her parents knowing.
This girl is really independent. Good for you.
Bad parents, remember. They don't know their child sneaking out to like...
They just learned that she's skipping school. That was like the very first thing at the beginning of the movie. That they're like, Carmen isn't the perfect child. We just learned the school called. She's been skipping 2 days for like a month now.
Yeah, to go to like Milan.
Well, they didn't know that she was going to Milan. They thought she was like hanging out behind the school, maybe smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
Like that's the next level for a child of two international spies. Is of course she's not smoking cigarettes behind the school. Of course she's off on a secret mission to Milan.
Yeah.
Even if the secret mission is like to shop.
Probably. But I do also like that Junie's mimicking comes back. Again, little things that we kind of forgot about.
Yeah.
And Junie's clever like his mom. I think that's him showing that he takes after his mom more so than his dad.
Yeah.
But I also like how like the stupid part of them popping out, like they're just clearly off frame and popping up,
standing up.
Yeah.
But as a kid, you don't think about that.
No,
it's solely humor for the adult watching the movie. And again, we get a little scene with Danny Trejo, who's now like back in because we're family. Mm-hmm. But remember, Danny Trejo's 5'4", 5'6", and so he's 100% standing on a little box back there.
Wait, you think I'm 5'6"?
I think you're probably the same height as me, and I'm 5'4".
5'8".
Oh.
I'm a bit taller than you.
Oh, you're a little taller than me. Well, Danny Trejo's the same height as me then.
Your husband does look down on both of us.
Yeah,
so.
Stupid giant man.
But no, I do like, there are parts of the ending that I quite like too, of like how they set up Minion of like giving, like, hey, if you press this button, you like it's actually a kind of dark moment of like, if you take your hand off that button, you're going to transform into this mutant. And he's like, hell yeah.
Yeah, because then I get extra hands.
It's kind of got a bunch of like weird body horror elements to this movie.
100% does. 100% does.
Yeah.
But it's all done in like a kid appropriate sort of way. We don't see true transformation. Everything's very CG. And even then when he comes back out, it's, very much like a mask prosthetic with some CG put on top for the eyes to blink and mouths to move.
Yeah, the kids having their moment as well to like overcome their robot selves.
Yep.
But also like when we do see that the parents like go into action, we never see it fully. It's always taking place off screen.
Yep.
Making it much more of a kids movie, and that's because Robert Rodriguez said he wasn't going to. They weren't going to see their dad, on screen at least, his dad wasn't going to beat up anyone in front of his kids.
Yeah.
And he was going to let Minion do it to himself, because like that's one of the comments they had in like writing the movie is like, well, why don't they have the dad beat up Minion? He's like, why does he have to? That's why it works so well with the Daydream too, is like he wants to be a strong man without having to resort to violence for his son.
Exactly. You can be better than that.
Yeah.
Even if they do karate chop like 500 children.
As far as we know.
Yeah.
Well, no, they don't even
have to.
No, they don't karate chop the kids because the
override.
Yeah, the override for benevolence.
That's true, but they were gonna karate chop 500 kids.
Yeah, well, one was gonna take the 1,000 on the left, one was gonna take the 1,000 on the right, but there's 5,000. Who's gonna take the fifth one?
Yeah, don't worry. Your brother is here.
I do love that they're back together, like just magically of like, I don't even know why we were fighting.
I do love that, because honestly, any more background knowledge would have been wasted at this point in the movie. Not caring or knowing why we were originally squabbling. Mwah, beautiful. Perfect explanation.
Yeah, and we all have like little growths and stuff where like Floop acknowledges Junie's pure heart and mind, and he's no longer warty, and now Spy Kids are saving the day. They have a thumb servant.
I will say that the movie does kind of hammer home that the reason that Junie is warty is because he's sweaty because he's nervous. And I don't think that's how warts work, but I'm not a dermatologist, so don't take my word for it.
No. But also Floop has his own new co-stars, Carnalita and Junito.
I love them. They're perfect. Because also it's finally a robot, and I don't have to worry about the ethics of him having children in that studio.
Yeah, and it ends on a emergency assignment from the president, or head of the OSS, George Clooney. No, it's the president himself.
It's the president himself. And I love this little bit with the, like, blackout bar to, like, hide his identity, where it's just, like, a little pair of sunglasses he can take on and off. Mm-hmm. That, to me, was peak comedy.
Yeah, it's just like, okay. It made me think of the eyebrows in Fooly Cooley.
100%. And I also love that even though this is a very brief scene that he's in, they have picked a man who is so unmistakably who he is that even as a child, you're like, I'm pretty sure I know who you are even with the little bar across your eyes.
Yeah. And I mean, this moment, too, is just like where he's like, no, I'm not asking the parents.
I'm asking Carmen and Junie.
But no, we're a spy family now.
I do love that they've been on a singular mission, and I would say they didn't do a bad job because they didn't die, but I also wouldn't say they did a good job, and they're now the best spies the organization has ever seen.
Well,
feels like flattery.
The reason I bring this up is because immediately in the second movie, the kids are solo on missions.
Yes, they're the parents are not even needed.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, okay. But especially for the first one, because when this one hit, it was not confirmed that this was going to be a series.
Yeah. Which they came out like back to back to back.
They did, but it did take this one making money at the box office for it to come out that this was potentially going to be a series. And I don't think Rodriguez wrote or directed any of this with the thought of a sequel.
No.
I think, and honestly, it kind of works out the best because, yes, the rest of the series is fun, and especially if you have a kid who's into spies and is about this age, like, it's a really great time, and now there's plenty for you to watch. But having this be a standalone also worked really well, because if nothing had happened after this, no one would have been upset.
Yeah, no, I get that. And, like, I honestly was surprised reading that critics generally like this movie.
They did.
Despite it being a weird little kids movie.
No, and I kind of see it. It's well written. Like, there's not a ton of big plot holes that aren't just excused away with, like, well, it's fantasy. And most of that being like, oh, the technology isn't real. Yeah, it's fantasy. Oh, the country doesn't make sense. It's fantasy. You know, the kids are a little bit more buff than maybe a real kid is. Yeah, it's a spy fantasy. But it's not in, like, oh, bad writing, there's bad plot holes, or even the excuse of, like, it's a kids movie. It holds your hand a little bit, but not nearly as egregiously as most, honestly, even adult murder mysteries or spy-based films. It's a solid movie. It just has the quirky visuals and is targeted towards kids.
Yeah, in a very smart and well-done way, I think.
Oh, 100%.
Because, like, even if, like, beyond the point of it, like, being a heavy impact for the Latin community, granted, I mean, I'm not super knowledgeable about their film history, but...
Sure.
It's a movie for all kids too. I think that's the point that he got across. It wasn't, while it was Latin representation, it was a movie for everyone to enjoy and not take seriously.
Absolutely, and the message of the movie works super well with it being a spy-based film, and it's honestly not too aggressively like learn a moral, learn a lesson. It just kind of fits nicely, which we've talked before about how it almost feels like a requirement that a kids movie has some type of lesson that you get out of it. A few Ghibli films being kind of the only exception.
Yeah, really. And, like, there's a few, like, even though I don't think the sequels are as good.
No.
Or hit as solidly as this one.
No, they're still fun, though.
Exactly. I think that just led that train of fun kids movies. That led to another cult classic of his that isn't a cult classic for me, but is a cult classic for people like 4 or 5 years younger than me.
100%. And honestly, the train of Spy Kids isn't actually done. Last year, the newest movie came out. It is on my list. I just couldn't get to it amongst all the other ones. Netflix picked this back up in 2018 for a 2-season TV show, and hasn't technically dropped the rights to potentially a 6th movie that would be Netflix based. Rodriguez has never backed down from the idea of making more of them. As long as he feels like they're having fun, so far he hasn't seemed to complain about them.
Well,
so.
they're all low budget, and it's all just a bunch of people wanting to make kids movies.
And the very small handful of comments or interviews that I could find with the adult actors who have worked on these films, all of them talk about how they wanted to work on a movie because they liked working with Robert Rodriguez. Which means that you're going to just kind of have a never-ending supply of people who want to be in your movies, and that works well for these lower-budget films.
Or, hey, hit us up. I know I'm pasty, but I'd be at a movie.
I would love to be in the background.
I would, too.
I'd be terrible, but I would love to do it.
Oh, yeah.
So. I don't know if I would be able to walk normal. I'd be thinking too hard about it. They'd be like, hey, lady in the back, please stop.
It's like Moist Critical, who I think technically his arm is in Hunger Games.
Yeah, no, and I would 100% frame the 2 seconds I'm in that film.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So Chris, at the end of it all, how do you rate Spy Kids on the good, bad, weird scale?
I do rate this a good weird. Okay. And I rate it weird because the visuals are weird, and I think that's what a lot of people were put off by rewatching this as an adult. I know a lot of the people in our household, when I was rewatching it last night, for the 3rd time, were not excited that I was watching this on the big screen and not on my little tiny TV in my dungeon. I watched it on the big screen because I knew it was good and I knew they'd like it again, and once we started actually watching it, everyone really liked it.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it's not something I'm going to be throwing on all the time, but I actually give it our holy trifecta of good, bad, weird, because
I can totally see it.
It does have a good core to it.
Yeah.
It's got some bad moments.
100%.
I mean, it's supposed to be written and directed by a kid, so that's just natural.
Yeah.
But it's also just a weird-ass movie all around.
It is, and honestly, again, I'm not going to be watching Spy Kids all the time. I'm probably going to take a break between this watching session that I just got through and trying to get around to the newest one. But with that said, if you haven't seen it in a while, you need to. It's actually surprisingly good.
So you recommend it?
100% I do. In fact, depending on what we're doing tomorrow at Girls' Night, this might be on the docket. We'll see. Yeah,
I'm a light recommend.
I get it.
I don't think it's definitely one of those ones that's not going to be for everyone.
No.
And I don't think the nostalgia holds up as well as rewatching it as an adult, because I forgot so much about the movie.
I forgot most of the movie.
But I think it is definitely a good intro spy movie for kids if you're trying to get them into it.
I definitely agree. And I think if you haven't seen it in a while, I was surprised by how much quality I found watching it. I was not burning my eyes trying to get through it, and I didn't feel like I was watching a kid's movie.
Same. Well,
it was a kid's movie. Don't get me wrong. This is not a movie that kids could watch, but is for adults. It is undoubtedly a kid's movie. I just didn't feel like I was being bombarded by stupidity.
Yeah. Nope, I feel you. But so begins the end of our action-packed season 6 of the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast. We do have one more child-friendly movie before we go driving into the gore and violent stuff that is to come.
Back to our normal routine.
Yes. But anywho, this has been the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Peace. Thank you for stopping by this here town of the Good, the Bad, and the Weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always, check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace.